computer, on computer. Right. We are recording. Okay. Welcome. I'm Faye Waterman and this is Tuesday Night Live, talking all things business. I have a guest tonight. Her name is Leigh Connell and she is an End of Life Doula, or walking your pet home. Welcome, Leigh. Thank you so much for your time.
You, Faye. We're up for an interesting conversation, I hope.
We are up for a very interesting conversation, and we are, yes. So, Leigh, tell me a little bit about what got you into, or what got you interested in becoming an End of Life Doula. What was it?
Okay, look, I think to actually become the End of Life Doula is something that's come to me in the last few years. Before that, I've had quite a bit of interest in death and dying, and I guess most of that has come from personal experience. So leaning into those and losing my sister in a car accident, other deaths that I've sort of been around, living in the Pacific and an atoll in the middle of the Pacific, and how they deal with death and dying there culturally. And it's quite a sacred time, I think. But in our Western view, we take a while to sort of lean into it. It's something that we're quite fearful about. And so my interest has sort of stemmed there for many, many years, actually. And it's not until perhaps being older and a bit wiser, perhaps, that I've leaned into it and gone, you know what, this is where I need to be. This is what I want to be able to hold people's hand and walk alongside them.
Yes. And we do actually have a fear of dying, I think, the general population. There are some that don't, but most of us have that fear of dying. Why is that?
Maybe it's not so much fear of death, but it is a fear of actually the dying and the unknown. The suffering. So the unknown and the suffering, I think, are the two big things. What happens on the other side of death? Obviously,
that's
we
an
haven't got
interesting
people
question.
to talk that.
A very interesting question.
Yeah, so whether people want to think about that at all, and if they do, it's like a big ending that no one knows what to next. So that's one of it. And then it's just the loss that we have. So we've built up such a relationship or a love or whatever, or all sorts of things that we build up with people in their lives, and then we lose that. So we see it as a loss rather than actually seeing it as part of living and the whole cycle of life. So that we are, it's guaranteed. If we're born, we are going to die.
At some stage we are. And I think, our death, I suppose, can be a celebration of our life. I think, we need to turn it around and create that celebration of how we lived and what we did.
Yeah, or I would like to think that if we actually contemplated our end a bit more and what is the end and what is the other side, if we contemplated that, we would actually maybe have a greater appreciation for living, which we would then live better. So I think not by just looking at the suffering, but looking at that bigger picture when you are well, or having those conversations, we can have a laugh and we can have that, look at it in that light, rather than when someone is suffering because they've got something on their plate or something's really imminent, that death is nearer.
Yes.
But for us, if we start having conversations, we can break that down. And I think it actually means that we know more about what our choices are. We start contemplating those things. Doesn't mean that they're fixed, and we might develop that thinking more. And I think it's just a healthier way to look at it.
A more accepting way, I suppose, of looking at it and thinking about it, because most people do fear death. They don't want to die, but I always say we're put on this earth for a certain period of time to do whatever it is that we're meant to do, and then when time's up, time's up. But I think that we really need to learn to appreciate life as it is, instead of thinking and whinging and groaning and moaning about all the bits and pieces. You know, the things like the glitches in the internet and things that aren't working for you. And think, oh, okay, this has happened for a reason. There's always an alternative. You have to be flexible. You have to be able to turn things around and not get to your end of your life and say, what if I had done? What if, what if, what if? Because we don't want to spend our time saying when we're on our deathbed, if we're ill or whatever it may be, is what if I'd have done this? I wish I had have. I wish. We can, you know, celebrate life each and every day, because each and every day is a blessing.
Yep, yeah. So look, I think it's one way of that contemplation just means, it does mean that you've got more gratitude for the small things in life. It's not the big things. It's not the bigger house, the bigger car, the new dress. It's not all those things, as much as they might be really nice to have. It's the stuff that sort of is here in the heart, and what's really important to you, and the people that give you, that are really authentic, and that gives you your, authenticity.
Yes.
That's the value that you can have by actually just sort of having those discussions, rather than waiting till the end, towards the end. And everybody is so different, so their circumstances will be different. It's not one model for everybody.
No.
But if we all started just thinking about that further, a bit earlier, it'll make that later part much easier.
And so when you are working with somebody, you start with them at what stage in their life? Is it when they know that they are actually coming near to the end, or is it earlier than that?
It's really, again, it's not one thing. So again, if anyone is going to engage in end-of-life doula, for whatever reason, something has sparked an interest in them, an interest in that. So they've got a little bit of understanding of what that person can do, and it's really about holding their hand and helping them in a very non-medical way, and being an advocate for them, having their back. And a lot of it is the emotional support. So dealing with families and dealing with their own thinking, and so they can think aloud in some ways and actually just verbalise some things. So the first thing that I ask people is, what led you? What was the curiosity? Why have you made that phone call to make contact? Because that's a big thing to do. And a lot of that will come through word of mouth, as opposed to, what's that?
It's a huge...
People are not really going to Google. Yeah, no. Yeah, to action something. To do that, to make contact, is probably is a really big thing.
Yeah.
The idea of a doula is actually quite old. It's a Greek term, and it was the wise woman of the village that saw people into life and saw people out of life. Mm. We don't have that village so much anymore. We don't have those wise people doing that in that older sort of fashion, traditional way.
No.
People are not dying at home as much as 100 years ago, that sort of thing. So things have actually changed. So we've been disenfranchised from that ageing and that death sort of process.
Yes.
So over the last 100 years. So that just means that people have got it's been replaced by other things. So it's been outsourced in many ways. And that's also the emotional outsourcing, as well as the practical and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it's quite exciting now, because there's a bit of a pushback. You know, people are starting to reclaim ageing and dying, because they want to do it more on their terms, as opposed to being really medicalised.
Yes, and I think that we are realising that we have more options, more choices, and we can choose how we live toward the end of our life, if we're ill, or whether, it's just natural causes. I think being prepared, making sure that you leave your legacy. I know some people who actually are putting their eulogies together, or their friends are putting their eulogies together for them, and things like this. And it's the celebration. It's not a sadness. It's someone's life, and they've lived it to the fullest. So let's celebrate that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'll use my mum's example. She's now 94, and it's probably 20 years ago. It must have been a significant party of hers, and we went, let's write mum's eulogy sort of story type thing as a family event. Now, I think because we started the conversation with her, and she went, well, I want to see what's in it. So she doesn't want to wait until afterwards. She wants to know what's in it. So then I went, right, well, let's have this Let's Start Mum's eulogy thing. Now, look, we didn't complete the process in that, but basically it started a conversation, and there was grandchildren, there was different people that wanted to add something to it. So we've had some conversations around that, particularly for Mum in that time, which hopefully may lead to other people having conversations. Right down to now, she does live in aged care. How we would like it to be when that she actually does die, which includes I would like to be able to bathe her, and then we'll actually take her back to where she used to live, that sort of thing. There's a few logistic things, but it basically means having conversations with family members, more things that they cannot. But
to be able to cater for whomever has asked for them to do the service. And I think, because they're special people themselves that are dealing in this every day, that that they have that kind of empathy and can have that flexibility.
And I think in many businesses now we're getting a really good mix of head and heart.
Yes.
So you need a business model that's going to work, but you also need to be able to have a heart and a giving.
Yes.
So that's really important things, and that's how we work, or that's how it's great to be able to support businesses like that. And we are starting to get that because they are the perhaps more innovative type places that will go, hold on, what's going on out there? We need to adapt our business model or our product or change to include that.
Yeah.
And there's some really good practitioners around that will include. And it's about having choice.
Yes, it's about having that choice. So, okay, let's look at the type of people who would call you, and what sort of questions do they ask you when they call you up?
Well, the first thing, as I said, I want to know what drew them. What is it? Had they heard me speak somewhere, whatever it is? Why have they made contact? And what is it that's something at the moment that might be an issue for them? And it could be at different times of life. So a recent one was around loss. So it wasn't loss particularly around a death, but it was a loss, a change, a significant change, and that person had ended up in a situation that could have been the end of their life.
Mm-hmm.
But it was quite a big loss and change. So that was a physical change that was happening around where they live and all that sort of stuff. So even though it was quite resourceful and working alongside family members to do some very practical things about the dwelling more than the actual person, the conversations that I would sit down with this gentleman and that we would have was about him embracing these significant changes in life as an ageing person that are going to impact the next changes, that are happening in his life. So it is, dealing with loss is probably one of the really big things. And they're conversations that he could not have with his family.
No.
And they weren't conversations that we thought we didn't really know that we'd have, I suppose.
Yes.
But that was the thing that family came back to me, and that just this process went much better than they anticipated.
Yes.
And sometimes when you've got that independent person, I'm not emotionally attached to this whole family and what's going on. So you've actually just got that independent person. It is so much easier to just have over a coffee and over a sort of fairly casual sort of situation, but to start having these chats about these things.
Yes.
Yep.
And family members, it's very difficult for family members to actually have that type of conversation because it is difficult. It's a part of your family. It's a loved one. It's someone that you may not want to lose, and we don't want to lose, but it's also, too difficult for some emotionally to have that conversation. So it is always better for someone. You're kind of like a mediator in some ways, aren't you? to go in and
Yeah.
have that conversation to talk about, you know, what do you actually want?
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, and that's not something that everyone's going to think about. So that's
No.
actually that's sort of quite hard. And the other thing that we can bring to the table is just being knowledgeable about things and about resources. And I remember sitting with a couple, and I talked about something they can use on their laptop, basically about gathering. It's called Gather Your Crew. So we know that it takes a lot of people to keep supporting you at home towards end of life.
Mm-hmm.
And in this house, there would be quite a few people, services coming in, there'd be family or different people that want to do things. And I looked at this husband and thought, my gosh, he's just exhausted. I don't know how he keeps up with it all.
Mm.
And so I said, listen, do you want to just have a look? Let's get the iPad out and just have a look at this. This may be useful. And it's a free resource. So it's a tool that they can actually identify what it is that they need help with during the week and invite friends, basically, who can then identify what they can help. Yeah, sure, I can pick up kids at this time every second day, or I can do this. Or there's different, and it's just a great, it's just an excellent tool for people to be able to contribute and know that it's what people need and it's valued. I mean, how many lasagnas can you have? Everyone thinks, all right, I better take something over, which is a lovely, it's a lovely offer, but to spread it out, particularly if something is quite going to be over quite a long period of time.
Yes, yes, and that gives them something to look forward to too, because they're seeing different people on different days, having different conversations, not the same things over and over again, or people tolerating them. Saying I have to go here and do this, and that can be a burden sometimes for people.
And in this case, the woman was losing her speech. Mm-hmm. So she was going quite technical. So this was a really good way of actually, she had control here. She had communication. She had a communication tool.
Yes. And so it makes a difference. So what kind of things do you do besides have a conversation with them and find out what they need or what they're thinking or those sorts of things? What sort of things do you actually do for people?
It may be accompanying people to medical appointments. So if they do want something, actually, going with them, it may be help. It may be help around the house. It may be actually doing a few things and sorting out the flowers or whatever, taking the dog for a walk, that sort of things. It could be being the advocate for them with other services and agencies. So making those conversations and making those calls to follow up on those. It could be visiting them or being with them in hospital or in a hospice situation, wherever they are. Again, it's those conversations about what is it that you want and how can we make sure that can practically, happen. Yes. So obviously there's all the paperworky type things, and I call it lining up the ducks. So, it is having your legal things in place and your advanced care directive and your goals of care, whatever paperwork needs to be in place. Just checking and making sure they are in place and active. Mm-hmm. And then what are the comfort things for you, the quiet? Is there certain smells? Is there certain things? Do you like to be touched? Do you like to have a massage or not? What are those important things to actually have? Yeah. Sometimes people just don't know what others want. And that's right. It's quite sad, really.
But that's where you come in and you ask those questions to find out what they want. It's not what they need, it's actually what they want and how they want to be treated toward the end, and to make sure, they can be more comfortable if all their legal papers and their documents and all that sort of stuff is in order and active, as you say. And then the other things can also take care of themselves. But if their family has an understanding of what that loved one wants, then they can actually, put a team together, if there's a few of them, to say, well, okay, let's sit down and have this conversation. And you could be the go-between person to talk to them and say, this is what's really needed. Yeah.
Someone sort of it's like the event coordinator, really. They
Yes.
hold the big picture. And there'll be the key people that will be the ones that you will communicate with. And it may not be the person that is actually dying. It may be someone else. And they are often the ones that sort of need that support to be able to do what they can do. And sometimes to be told, you know what, you really need to just have a break, step outside. You know, what is it that you've got planned in your day to go and sort of rejuvenate, to be back here again?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And creating that awareness, because, you know, they can get so involved in what's going on that they forget about taking care of themselves.
Yeah. And perhaps want to be in control as well, because they are losing something. There's a big loss happening, so we go for loss and we try to control more things. And that may be then trying to control other people, and of course families. When significant events bring up the best and the worst in us, and in death that is no different.
Yeah.
So you know, all those sort of family histories and things may raise and bubble to the surface. Yeah. So by being the independent person, you can be the one that's having the conversation.
Yeah, and keeping the peace and harmony if there isn't any there, you know, or just easing that emotional feelings for the people that need to go through that emotion. So you're the one. How do you, as an individual, take care of yourself when you are dealing with this sort of thing?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of things. This isn't the type of work that you're going to do loads and loads of. Mm-hmm. It's at this point in stage. For me, I've got a really good other doulas that I've actually, another one that we train together, and we've got a little group of us. So we're very, very good support for each other, and very good for if this client might be better suited with that person. Sometimes it is a little bit about who might work well with each other.
Yeah.
And then it's the self-care, and then it's the other things that I have in my life and the other bits and pieces that have got nothing to do with the sort of the end of life world.
Yeah.
That I do for work and leisure.
It's a kind of a balance thing, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think that's what you'll find. Many of the people that are leaning into this work or into this area are perhaps older. So we've got some life experience under our belt. What you're bringing with it, and you've got some reflection, so you know what it is that you want in life. You know how you need to look after yourself a bit more. But that is really important. Yeah.
So how many doulas would there be in Australia? Do you know?
I don't know, but I mean, there's 3 main doula trainers, and I've gone with sort of the best known one here in Australia. So that's good. Look, I think it's hard to know. There's a fair bit of discussion going on about at the moment, because it is an unregulated sort of area.
Okay.
It is heading to a formal recognition, formal qualification, I should say. Mm-hmm. If we follow what's happening around the world, and that will be particularly in the States and in Canada and the UK, more States and Canada. It has formalised much more, and there are a qualification in different schools, I guess, and some of them, have coupled up with the hospice and palliative care side. So in that more medical sort of area, whereas here at the moment, it's still we haven't quite got that close link yet.
Right,
even though
it will happen. It will happen eventually.
I think it's the natural progression. We've got an aging population, and we've got baby boomers that want to go out with their own way, rather than just
absolutely
mum and dad went.
Yes.
I was going to say out with a bang, but they will go in the way and celebrate things as they see fit. Yeah,
absolutely. And the grey nomads, and they're spending their children's inheritance is what they say. Going out and having a good time and doing that. No, I say fantastic. You worked hard for what you've got, so go out and enjoy it. And this is, not regretting anything. Let me take you to another space, but you have another component to this is walking home your pet.
Walking your pet home.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think because a couple of things. Pets. Oh my gosh! I mean, I can't remember the number now of how many pets basically that we have in Australia. huge amounts. And for many people, you know, their pets are their children. Their pets are their absolute loved ones. And it's the unconditional love that that pet sort of offers. So what happens when a pet dies?
It's very
You've got
traumatic.
a huge loss. You've got a huge loss and a trauma. Yep. So the process isn't, you know, what we're dealing with is the loss and the emotion around that. So if we can be prepared a bit earlier for that again, and thinking about how that might sort of affect you, I think that's where I've sort of gone. Like, I just think it can reduce the life, you know, reduce sort of the bereavement afterwards, if that's actually just been a consideration of that. So even just an aging dog, you know, how are you going to be able to deal with that if, you know, it becomes incontinent, or these different things that may happen to the dog? You've got the vets, of course. You've got that medical side that will give you all that advice, which is fantastic. That's what that's their specialty. But how's that going to impact on you and the loss that may happen, particularly if you're a single person that you've had this dog for the last 19 years or something, or if it's a family and it's a family member? How's that going to impact?
Absolutely.
So this is only a new sort of thing, but it's just that I've added. So so testing the waters on that one.
Yeah, but it's actually supporting people, and I know I've had 2 animals I've had to put to sleep, and the trauma and the emotion around that is pretty horrendous. Because, you know, your animals get to a certain stage and you can either keep them living through some form of medication or whatever, but then they tend to get worse and worse. And is it selfish to keep them alive, or is it better for you to be able to put them to sleep where they're out of pain? And the choice is pretty hard.
And there's possibly no right or wrong answer to many questions.
Yeah.
And I think we can tend to give ourselves a hard time of that, because we've had to make a choice.
Yeah.
And the choice, and you need to sort of then live with that choice. So it's really just helping people make sense of that and to not be so hard on themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that if you were to give a couple of tips in regards to someone who was looking for some support for their family going through this emotional stress of someone who is knowing that their end of life is coming, and the family doesn't really know what to do, what do you suggest? How do they get in contact with you, or how do they get to know that there are people such as yourself, doulas out there, that can support them through these processes?
Look, as a business, that is probably the biggest dilemma, getting to the right people. So for myself and other doulas like myself, we're just out doing things, giving talks, being at wellness expos, just doing what you can to actually get that word out there, doing interviews on the radio here today as well, and just getting that word out there so that people are getting familiar with hearing people talk about it. So they may not make contact, but it basically may be, right, I heard something about one of those. What was it again? So again, using your social media to just get that message out there so that it's actually being heard. So that one day someone goes, you should ring them and just sort of have a chat and see what you can sort of find out, or how that might work. There's some other really good resources out there about education around death and dying. So again, and everyone's sort of much the same, trying to get that bit of space of getting that knowledge out there.
But how do you find this information? Where do you go to get it when you don't know where? You don't know, firstly, that it's available, or you know you're dealing with a family member who's coming to the end of life, but you don't know who to talk to or what resources are available. Who do you talk to?
I think it just depends. It depends on who you are, what generation you are, and maybe it's Dr. Google. Well, I shouldn't say doctor, but maybe it's Google. Maybe it's Google. What are the signs of dying? People don't actually may not know some of those sorts of things. It just may go. So or hopefully people will ask each other,
Yeah.
which, has got some great things to it, but it's also got some other things that are, what will come with that will be the conscious or unconscious bias that they may bring with that.
Yes.
When you ask someone else.
Yes.
Or someone else's, you don't want to be dealing with someone else's discomfort about it and who just wants to change the subject.
Yes.
Well, that's the really interesting one. I mean, earlier this year, I think it was, there was a philosophy group that had, they have different topics, and the topic one month was death. So there I sat on a panel with a philosopher and a writer.
Really?
And look, I think this was probably one of the biggest attended, monthly events that they actually have.
And that would have been fascinating.
80 or 90 people. So
that would have been fascinating.
That's right. So we've got a philosophy putting death in a philosophical sort of way.
Yeah.
We've got a writer who had her own experience talking about it, and then sort of me talking about it in more a
practical way.
Daily sort of way, I guess, just a part of life, as opposed to something looking back historically of the philosophy. Yeah. But it was great. The questions, people didn't sort of hold back. I think the conversation could have kept going.
Yes.
So I guess for a start, they knew the topic and they were willing to lean into it.
Yeah.
But I think if the opportunity is there, people will talk about it as long as it's in a safe sort of space.
Yes.
But around the family, why are you going to talk about it? Because it's probably got to do with someone that's either sitting around the table or very close by.
Yes.
And that is different.
Yes.
I'd love it if we have more of the death cafes or the things like that where we're actually leaning into it and having some discussion about it, not particularly around a person. Or it could be that it's around you, that you're just having some reflection about, how you want to organise your send-off.
Party. I'll have a party.
And from there, well, then it's a few of the actions about writing those things. I know for myself, I've flipped and flopped and changed my mind about, first of all, I did want to be cremated, then I thought I wanted to be buried, and now I'm going, right, I think it's a natural burial. So as long as there's some thinking about it and perhaps people know about it, that's the important thing to what your wishes are, as opposed to got no idea what they would want and we will do whatever we've always done.
Yes. Yeah. So making those decisions, creating that awareness for people to be able to make those decisions of what they actually want. Yeah.
I had a conversation today with someone who spoke to me about a 53-year-old, and it's come. The end has come extremely quick, or is coming very, very quick, and they've got really no idea of what the person would want.
Yeah.
And you just go, wow. I mean, you sort of think, what inkling does the close family members have about what the person likes in life? What is it that how that they might present themselves, and how do they live, and that sort of thing. But this was sort of a family member down a little bit, but they were concerned and going, how do we find out about this? And we think this is her religious or spiritual background. But
I don't know.
So
yeah. Very
but I don't know. Yeah.
Very interesting.
So then they said this line of going, well, they're making decisions around this person. And the comment was, well, look, they're only 53, they wouldn't have thought about these things.
Yes.
We can start thinking about these things much earlier.
Yes. And being
flipping back a little bit to the pets, not so much to do with a doula, but a family can be the doula for their own pet loss. And they're educated to their children.
Yes.
So when the cat or the dog does die, it's not like it's just zipped away and nothing's happened and we get a replacement. That's what children will learn from. How do we actually deal with,
this
Mufti who has died?
Yes.
What are the joys? What were all the really good things? Not just focusing on the loss, but what are the gems that little four legs brought to our life?
Yeah. And they bring lots of joy to your life. But
yeah,
they do.
Yeah.
Okay, so how can people get in contact with you, Leigh?
Best way to contact me is probably via my Facebook page. So that's Walking You Home. And no, my website is Walking You Home. My Facebook page is actually Leigh Connell, End of Life Doula.
Right.
And then there's a sort of pick one. They're probably the best ways. Have a look. I try and write a few things to put up, put some links to some sort of useful resources, that sort of thing.
Good.
Certainly, if people want to ring up and have a chat,
Yes.
you know, head you in the what might be, even if it's education and awareness, what might be around for you in your area.
Yes. Yes, and it's just creating that awareness and giving them the resources and the information. They may not want to use it, but it's there if they decide to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they say that there's, well, you know, it's sort of said that there's 40 decisions to make in having a funeral.
40.
Now, that's yeah, that's, you know, that's one sort of thinking, I suppose. But if you can think of some of those and be fairly clear about what they are beforehand, that is much easier than someone else having to try and make those decisions in the fog of losing someone that they've loved.
Yes.
Yeah.
So true. So true.
Yeah.
And it is. It's not, there shouldn't be a fear around death. There should be I suppose there's a sadness, not a fear, a sadness of loss. But you know, there's a way of working through it and making it easier for everyone involved, not just the person who is passing on. It's just for everyone, so they can deal with their grief in the way that they need to, and know that they have that support out there. Yeah.
And if we bring it back really back to sort of our heart and to nature, we're looking at it as a cycle.
Yes.
You know, we've got the seasons, we've got the things that happen with, this is part of a cycle of life.
Yeah.
That's a way as well. Yeah.
It is. Well, thank you, Leigh. Thank you so much for participating tonight and your patience. And if anyone wants to contact you, please contact you through your Facebook page or your website, which is Walking You Home. And you know, it's not that bad. Have that conversation with your family. We'll be back next week, hopefully without any technical issues, and we'll be live. Bye for now.
Okay. Thank